name's Katie Buckingham. I'm our curator here at Museum of Glass. And as I mentioned, I'm honored to be here with Bri Chesler, our visiting artist for the week. Bri was selected for a residency this year, which means that she gets to work with our Hot Shop team for a 5-day residency to try out new work and new ideas. Everything that Bri makes this week, she gets to keep and gets to continue working on. The museum has between 24 and 32 or so of these residencies a year, and it allows us to give artists like Bri the opportunity to push the boundaries of glass in new directions. We selected Bri because of her outstanding work from a previous residency, which is featured right now in the Chlorfine Gallery in an exhibition called Untamed: The Anatomy of Desire. Bri is an artist known for her innovative approach, blending glass techniques with other media and creating things inspired by her upbringing in the swamps of Florida. We are really excited about the somewhat chaotic nature of Bri's art, which fuses biology, botany, and creates forms that seduce and engage her audience and really start a conversation. Chesler has received accolades such as being the 2019 Pilchuck Emerging Artist-in-Residence, a 2020 Hauberg Fellow, and a recipient of the Saxe Emerging Artist Award in 2021. She's been an instructor at Pilchuck, and we're really delighted to hopefully be one of the first people to announce that Bri has been named a finalist as the Nettie Award of the Nettie Awards as of this Friday. So we're really excited to have Bri here at this exciting moment in her career. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her to let her tell you a little bit more about her work.
Congratulations. Hi, everybody. Usually I like to start by just telling you all that when I talk about my work, it's very personal. So I tend to get a little emotional, so bear with me. Good, we're ready to go.
Excellent. Over to you, Bri.
All right, again, I'm Bri Chesler, and this is originally where I grew up. It's in the swamp in Florida. This is essentially what my back and front yard looked like. And I really draw from a lot of the chaos that's in this kind of environment. It was where I found inspiration and safety as I was growing up. This is in Jupiter Farms, Florida. When I was growing up there, it was very rural and really just kind of preservation land. So there's a lot of natural preserves there, and you can't build on the swamp. So it's kind of inevitable that it just overgrows like this Jurassic Park-esque kind of nature. I grew up in an environment that was very abusive, and so art became my voice for all the things that I couldn't talk about or describe. And I find communicating feelings can be complicated sometimes because there's a lot of layers to those things. And so I used visual representation as my outlet. This is all artwork from when I was in high school. I was very into printmaking, and I did a lot of different kinds of sculpture, photography, still did a lot of mixed media. But my work really focused on this idea of duality within ourselves and the difference between the environment that we grow up in and who we become as an individual. When I went to college at the Kansas City Art Institute for metal fabrication and foundry. So I did not originally study glass in my education. This drawing inspired the first glass piece I ever made. At that college, they offered one glass class, and it was a fusing class. And we were very limited as far as our capabilities within the kiln and the materials we had to use. So I just kind of took advantage of whatever I was given, and this is the piece that was made from that drawing that I just showed. It is 6 different layers of glass fused together, slumped, and then cold worked. And at this time, my work was really focusing on the idea of entropy and chaos and thinking about how we put these systems in place to control that chaos. But if you zoom out and you look at the layering of systems, it kind of creates chaos within itself. And so I was creating these almost like little biological landscapes out of those ideas and turning them into glass pieces. And those pieces eventually turned into an installation. I've always been interested in installation. Space is very important to me in the sense that I think our environment is a reflection of us, and I think taking over a space really allows you to engulf someone in what you're trying to create. I can create like a whole different world for people to experience, and I really like that idea because it takes you out of reality and allows you to kind of step into this other mindset where you can allow yourself to feel a little bit more fantastical and whimsical when you look at the work and almost be a part of it yourself. So this was the installation I made in my senior year in college using all the glass pieces that I created. And this was really my first full gallery installation. Once I graduated school, I had to go back home to take care of my mom. Both of my parents struggled with different kinds of addictions, and at that time my mom was really struggling, and so I had to go home and help her out. And I went back to this place where I had experienced all this trauma growing up, and then I was in a position trying to take care of my mom, who was also dealing with her own struggles. And so I was creating a lot of really dark, kind of twisted work that I still kind of create now, where there's this level of creepiness and surrealness, but it is rather whimsical and ethereal in its own way. So these are some of the pieces from that time. And these are not glass, they're mixed media. I did not have access to glass after college, and so I just made with whatever I had available to me, and most of those things were all small scale at the time. Still did a lot of printmaking and drawing. And then in 2015, I got a scholarship to go to Pilchuck and take my first glassblowing class. And this really changed my life in many ways. Right before I was supposed to go, I got in a terrible car accident and didn't know if I would be able to go. And so I recovered and learned how to blow glass, and then decided to move out here 3 months after that, couch surfing on people's couches who were nice enough to offer me space. And I essentially moved out here and tried to find a glass job to get into the community here. So I ended up getting a job at a factory, a glass factory, and at the time I did not have the skill set to really blow glass in a way that was conducive to the production line. And so I got hired as basically a glass blower's assistant, but that lasted for only a very short time, and I ended up becoming the lead designer for this company. Essentially what happened is they discovered I had other skill sets outside of glass, like knowing how to do graphic design, and I would teach myself how to use different equipment like a laser engraver and all kinds of things, and that really added value to the company. And so what happened is I traded my designs. Instead of getting royalties, I was given hot shop time after work so I could teach myself how to blow glass. This is one of the first pieces I made from some of those experiments I did in the hot shop there. The center is glass, and then the white element is all hand-cut paper based on the ventricles of lungs. This piece is called Phantom. And then I started to integrate even more mixed media, and I would consider these pieces really the first of the kind of work that I currently create, where I integrate all kinds of materials with glass. And I was really trying to understand how to do that in a way that I thought was successful for my work. And so I made a lot of these smaller scale pieces. This piece has a real animal jaw, and then there's sculpted paper and glass. The title is Bitch, Being in Control of Him, and it was kind of a commentary on what was happening in the world in 2017 with the women's rights movement and the marches that were happening. And I was also, at that time, the only female working in the glass factory that I was in. So it was very relevant to what I was experiencing. This is cast glass with all kinds of mixed media. It's called Crux. This is another one of those small experiments to figure out how to combine glass with other materials. And this piece is called Wait, Wait. All of the rusting on the surface is real. It rusts over time, so the patina changes over the years. And it is blown glass, cast glass, flame-worked glass, and mixed media. So you'll see in the work in the gallery that I don't just blow glass in the hot shop. I use a lot of other glass techniques like neon, flame working, fusing, glass blowing, really whatever you can imagine glass to do, I will try and integrate into my work, even using glass in the way that it's manufactured in like industry. So using glass beads, using crystal rhinestones. I specifically source everything so that it's a reflection of the material. This piece is called Succulence. I like to play with balance and tension in my work. And so I was working on a series of pieces all based on balance. And this is one of the first ones in the series. This was one of my first explorations into installation in Seattle. And I did this in my apartment. It's a smaller scale installation, but I was really trying to figure out how to mount the work to the wall in a way that it looked like it was a part of the space rather than having it kind of disconnected. And so I was playing with different variations of how to do that, as well as different surface treatments for the work. This piece in particular kind of plays off of this idea of like a tick sucking your blood, and the idea of how that can be related to relationships and how sometimes relationships are one-sided and leave us tired. And so I was playing with that concept and with reflection, bringing the audience into the work through the reflection, and then as they get closer, it warps. This is Fun, Flirty, and Festering. It's in the gallery out front. And this was really the first large installation that I created while I've been working on this series of work. There was a call for a show at the Bellevue Arts Museum. I had only been blowing glass for 3 years at the time, but I decided to apply, and I figured I wasn't gonna get it, so I went big. Went all out, and I really put in an idea that I didn't quite know how I would actually make in glass. So I had to figure that out once I got accepted into the show. And this was the first time that I really assembled the work in this way. And it was a glass-focused show. So I really integrated all the different techniques of glass that I spoke about earlier. And at the same time, I was also playing with this idea of kind of rejecting the traditionalism of the material and playing into this natural gestural quality that glass has. I really try and capture the movement within glass and capture that energy that I'm trying to portray within the work. So this was the first attempt at that type of wall installation, and also with learning how to assemble the work in a way that spoke to the aesthetic I was trying to create. In 2019, I was an emerging artist in residence at Pilchuck, and when you get that residency, you get almost a full 8 weeks at the campus, and the ability to use all of their equipment outside of the hot shop. So I had access to kilns, to cold working, to flame working, and I was essentially given that time to experiment and do whatever I wanted. This was my group of other emerging artists in residence that I was paired with, and I think it was the only female group, all-female group that they've ever had. And we're still all very close. We still all talk and collaborate often. But a lot of the work that you see in the gallery was started in this residency. I went in with the idea that I wasn't gonna finish anything. I knew I just wanted to start a series of work that I could finish later in my studio and just use all of the tools to my advantage while I was at Pilchuck. And so I basically started all the work that you see in the gallery. And I experimented with some new techniques. This was the first of the pieces I finished, Bruised Brute. And there's quite a bit of cold working in this piece. The pieces are created through sandblasting and engraving, and so the glass is literally eroded off of the surface. This piece is about how when someone is really wounded, it's very hard to love them, and sometimes that just means that the vessel is empty, that it can't be filled, and it leaves the other person feeling empty and a little bruised as well. And so I was playing off of this visual of what a bruise could look like in my interpretation, as well as trying to recreate the actual erosion within the work itself that I was speaking to. Some details. I use a lot of beads. I use a lot of rhinestones, wire, really any kind of material you could think of. I probably have tried to put it with my glass work. Beads come from my childhood. I spent a lot of time entertaining myself and beading, and so I pulled from that, and I pulled from a lot of the things that I found were my comfort in those moments as far as material choices. This piece is called Squirm. The imagery is based off of a peach that's sliced in half and has a rotten core. This piece was really a jumping off point in the sense that I started to integrate light and other elements into my work outside of the sculpted pieces themselves to activate the work. And this was the first time that I started playing with that dynamic and trying to activate the glass in a way where it's not competing with the light, but it's actually being enhanced and kind of coming up to life. This piece is called Tit Tasty. This was my first time exploring fiber optics and using them within the work. Fiber optics and lighting is always something that I've really been drawn to, I think, because it can hold such a large presence in space and really change the dynamic of how you interact with the space itself. And so I found a lot of power in that, and obviously I really like color, and it allows me to kind of layer the colors on top of each other outside of the objects themselves and cast these different variations on the pieces in the show. Some details. And then I showed the exhibition that's in the gallery space now, originally at the Center of Contemporary Arts in Seattle. I was offered a show there, and I said, okay, let's do it. It was slightly more interactive than what's at the museum in the sense that the entire gallery floor was covered in pink fur, and you had to put on booties over your shoes to explore the space, so you quite actually felt like an astronaut in a way. You walked into this space, you were brought into another world, and you could interact with the work. This show was really interesting because it was the first time I saw the work in a space together after creating all these pieces separately in my little apartments and studio spaces in between, you know, doing everything else. And so it was really the first time I saw the full picture, and the first time I got to see people interact with my work in that way. This piece is called Sweet Dreams. It's an installation of neon and wall decals that I design. All the vinyl and decals that you see in the gallery space, I design and cut myself. I don't hire any of that out. I do that all myself so that I have control over the imagery as well as how it's installed within the space and the type of vinyls I'm using so that I can play off of those textures and colors that I'm trying to activate within the work. A lot of the neon that you see in my work, I hire out to other artists. I do know how to bend neon, but I'm still pretty fresh. And so I'll make some of the more simple elements, and then the more complex things like this cloud form, I will send out to my friends like Megan, who's assisting me in the hot shop, and they will help me create those ideas out of the neon. This piece, I did bend the neon myself. It was my first time ever bending neon. And this piece was made when I first showed the Untamed exhibition. It was one of the later pieces I added to that series. It's called Tickle, and it plays with the concept of innocence and sexuality and how we sometimes find interest in things that also make us uncomfortable. So playing with that kind of tension within the work. Often people don't see the hands in the center of the piece until they really look at it, and then they're kind of turned off a little bit. And I find that dynamic really interesting because everyone usually wants to eat this piece at first. So it's very delicious looking. And then just showing you some of the different representations of those works. This was my first internationally shown artwork, Cooties. It was created for a show where I knew it was going to be shown internationally as well as locally. The first gallery it was shown in was Traver Gallery here in Seattle, and then it was sent off to a gallery in Poland and exhibited there as well. Around that same time, I was offered a 3-day residency here with the team to make some new work. The work that I was focusing on then was a lot about how trauma affects your physicality, about that idea of having a knot in your stomach or something that's upsetting you internally, that feeling that you can't really describe when you're holding on to something heavy. And so I was playing around with these forms that looked like muscles, but they're deformed and they're kind of stretched and torn apart, and creating work based on that feeling, that concept of kind of being twisted and mangled inside. Just a little video of working with the team. And this is what some of those sculptures were turned into. The piece called Affliction, which is also in the gallery space. And this piece I finished right before I installed this show in 2024. And it really integrates glass in a different way for me, in the sense that, one, it's on the floor, but it's also integrating the lighting within the work rather than as a separate element. I built around it. And there's also all these little strings that kind of play and interact with all the different elements within the work. The other big part of my practice is collaboration. I work with a lot of different artists who are local and non-local, and that really influences my work, but also they are my peers and my teachers. So I learn a lot from my friends and the people that I work around, because they're all incredible makers. This was the Hauberg group that I did that residency with, and that residency is like a week long at Pilchuck, and it's meant to be a collaborative residency. You have to apply as a group. And so we applied together. These are all people I know. You'll see Minhee, who's also working in the hot shop here, Julia Chamberlain, Sarah, Terry, Katie, KT, and me, obviously. But we all do different forms of art. So Julia does a lot of technical work and works with neon. Sarah's also into neon, and KT does a mix of blown glass, metal, and neon work as well. So while we were there, part of what we wanted to do was teach each other our different skill sets. And so I taught people how to make molds, and I got to learn how to make neon. So that's where that neon from Tickle started. Part of the residency is also creating a piece of work together. This residency took place during the pandemic, so it was an interesting situation in the sense that we couldn't do it traditionally. We couldn't have a traditional gallery show or some kind of collaborative in that way. So Pilchuck offered us their gallery window, and our mission was to create an interactive artwork as you're passing along the street in front of the window that replicates the movement that light has within water droplets. So kind of capturing how light dances on the surface of water as it moves. Just a little video to show you. So we blew all these rondelles that had thick and thin spots to kind of create these water droplet shapes. And then all of the blue that you see on the window is vinyl that we cut and laid. And then there's neon behind it to create the light that moves as you walk past the window. My other collaborative partner is Minhee. We've been collaborating since we met. I met her at the first glass job I had at that factory. She was working there, and she was the only female glass blower at the time. And we really bonded. We're essentially family at this point, and so we make a lot of work together. We think very similarly, but our aesthetics go in different directions, and so between the two of us, we have a really nice dynamic where we kind of push and pull each other into different directions. This is some of our production work that we make together. And then we also do a lot of sculptural collaboration. This is down at Hilltop. This was obviously during the pandemic, but we worked with a lot of the students there, and we were able to create some sculptures. We were making things that were weird and cute and fun, kind of based off of like the corpse flower shape, lots of eyeballs and flowers. So here Minhee's attaching a leaf to the corpse flower center that has all the eyeballs on it. And so we were able to integrate a lot of the kids in the hot shop with us and teach them some of the different techniques that we would put into our sculptural work together. And on the last day, we were able to make some work with the whole crew. These are some of the pieces we created along with some of the other work we made that week. And then Megan, who is also here, we do collaborate with as well. So when she was here for her residency at the Museum of Glass, she invited us to come down and collab with her, and so we made some of these sexy fruits. We are still finishing this collaboration. And then this is just a little image of the Hot Shop crew from Hilltop. Minhee and I working together on some other collaborative pieces. And then we also did Concert in the Cone here at the museum with the Hilltop crew. And we recreated a drawing that the kids made and essentially helped them gaff it. So we were able to create what they envisioned. Both of us do a lot of outreach, and so doing events like this is really important. We really like to interact with the youth and all kinds of people who don't normally have access to glass. Yeah, that's me. I would say like future things that are happening for me are that I am going to be a visiting artist at Corning in October, doing a few days in the hot shop with their team there, creating some work. And then I am also going to be assisting some other artists at Pilchuck, the De La Torre brothers, who create a lot of mixed media installations as well. And hopefully I'll be able to create this new series of work that I'm working on while I'm at the museum.
Literal mic drop, everybody. Thank you, Bri. No, seriously, that was so cool. It's such a privilege to be here doing art history in real time and to have an artist who puts so much of yourself and the world around you into your work is a real treat to watch how it happens behind the scenes. So thank you all so much for coming. The crew is going to take a quick lunch break. So we'll be back, a little bit after 2. If you're looking for something to do while they eat lunch, highly recommend checking out Untamed Anatomy of Desire, which is in the Chlorophine Gallery. But I'm here if anybody has any questions. And I just wanted to give another second to thank Bri and the crew for such an incredible week.